Hey everybody, this is Bart Millard from Mercy Me.
Hey, this is Mike Weaver from Big Daddy Weave.
Hey y'all, my name is Justin Gambino.
Hey everybody, this is Jason Gray, and you are watching Kingdom Builder.
Hey everyone, welcome to Kingdom Builder. I'm your host, Kelly Meade, and I am very happy to be joined by Jason Gray for this special episode of Kingdom Builder as part of our anniversary series where we've been talking with some of our favorite artists about some milestone and just career-defining, well-loved albums. And for Jason, 2026 marks the 10th anniversary of Where the Light Gets In, which has become one of my personal favorites too. Thank you so much for taking the time to do this, Jason. It's always great to talk with you, so I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you, Kelly, and you've become such a good friend over the last few years. For the listener slash viewer, I think we had talked before this, but I think you became Kelly Meade in my mind when let's see, I missed a flight. I missed a connection to, I was playing somewhere in this in your region, and I was not going to be able. I missed my connecting flight, and so I was not going to be able to get there in time unless I booked a different flight that brought me into a different town. But my guitar pedal board was already going to the other town, like 3 hours away from this new airport. And so I posted, "Hey, is there anybody in Buffalo area?
Rochester.
In the Rochester area who might want to come to the show this evening, about an hour and a half away from there? If so, would you please grab my guitar pedal board that's, just go, doing laps on the luggage carousel at that airport, and bring it to me." And hoping for the best, I thought, I'm not going to hear back from anybody. And you responded very quickly and said, "Hey, I'd be willing to do it." So you saved my life that day. I think we got to the venue maybe 20 minutes before I played or something like that. And I thank you so much. And I quick hooked it all up and then into the concert, so that was a crazy day. But that was when I first experienced your um generosity of heart and your kindness, that you'd be willing to do all of that. And I don't know if you were already planning on being at the show anyway. My memory is that you may have like wondered about it, but I think it was like an hour and a half away from you, and you're like, "Yeah, I'll go."
Closer to 3.
Closer to 3 hours. Okay, yeah. You went so you could help me out. So very, very kind. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely remember that because it was one where I had heard about that show like at Solid Ground Coffee House. I had heard about it like 2 days before, and I was like, wait a minute, where is this place? Because I'd never heard of it before. And I looked it up and I called them and they said, oh, it's sold out. And I was like, oh, you're kidding.
Oh,
Um, so
yeah.
I was kind of bummed because that was a rough week, honestly. And I was like, man, this would have been so much fun to have something good to just go look forward to. So I was like kind of a little bit mopey and all that stuff. And then, like the morning of, when first thing I open Instagram and I see your video there, and I was like, wait a minute, I'm 10 minutes away from the airport. And that was the fastest DM I think I've ever typed in my
Wow.
life.
I know my way into the show. I can get on the guest list. Yeah, amazing.
So yeah, that meant a lot to me too, and I was just really glad that it worked out to be able to help you out, and that I happened to be, like I said, like 10 minutes from the airport. So
So great. Thank you. I think I heard you say that my album that we are celebrating the anniversary of, thank you for that. Um, I think I heard you say that of my albums, that was a meaningful one for you. What was what was it about that record that was meaningful to you? Like and was it because of the time of life that you were in, and those songs happen to intersect with that? Was it the musicality? Was it the songs on the record?
Okay, yeah, I will definitely tell you. So, Where the Light Gets In is definitely one of the first albums of yours that really resonated with me. And it's because of like first hearing Sparrows and that
Yeah.
song. And that just really stood out. And I just absolutely loved hearing your voice on that and the sound of it. And just the fact that it referenced, the story in Matthew 6 about worry and just God's provision and seeing that in like reflected in nature and the
Yeah.
flowers and the birds and because that's always been a very important passage to me to begin with. And back when I was in my teens and my faith was kind of just coming into where I was kind of figuring it out for myself and it was becoming more my own, and I had started going to a summer camp at the time, so any verse and passage that was about nature and just
Mm.
the way that that related to God's character, and it was just something that really connected with me more easily. And it was just a way that God kind of broke through and just helped me figure out more of who he is to me.
Not a few
So,
flower escapes his notice.
yep. So it's like fast forward here to, about 15 years later and hearing that song. And this was at a time where my faith had kind of become a little bit more cold and it wasn't really a priority in my life at the time because been through some stuff as we all go through. And I wouldn't say like I wasn't completely turned away, but definitely more distant. And so when I heard this song and it was just kind of reminding me again about how I first started to recognize God in my life and his presence and everything just a little bit more. So Sparrows, like I said, it took me back to when I was connecting with those passages and really being able to start seeking him again. So that's like kind of part one. And then, so that was when the album was first getting ready to come out. And then we got the pre-release of Where the Light Gets In into Today's Christian Entertainment. And I jumped on that because I was like, I want to review this one. I want to hear the rest of these songs. I had remembered hearing like With Every Act of Love and Remind Me Who I Am. And I think more like Falling in Love. I think I had heard those few songs. So I knew your name and those songs, but I didn't really dive into the rest of your catalog. So listening to Where the Light Gets In, I was like, every single song here was, connecting with me on some level. I was like, yes, exactly. I needed to hear this right now. And I was just like I said, the music of it, like you said, the musicality, just everything, song content. And it was just a really special one and kind of the start of bringing me back a little bit. Like I said, kind of reignited my desire to start seeking God more closely. And so then you can jump ahead another couple of years when I was in kind of a low point. Sorry if this is getting too long.
No, not at all.
Okay, so I was kind of at a low point, and listening to these songs again, they started taking on a little bit more meaning because more life had been lived and just, been through more stuff. So songs like Death Without a Funeral and Learning to Be Found and More Yours, they started to kind of speak into my life a little bit more at that point.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that was like, okay, that album. And then there was a few others by some other artists that really helped me through that time and kind of once again started to kind of pull me back. And thankfully it's been much better since then. And just so happens that later that same year was the first time that I actually got to see you and meet you in person when I came down to Nashville for the Doves back in 2018. So that whole trip is still kind of like a major God thing to me. And yeah, it's just so cool how God can use like music and people at the times in your life when you really need that. And he just knows what you need to hear. And so yeah, that's like a condensed version of what Where the
Yeah.
Light Gets In and your music and you as a person have meant to me over the years.
You're very kind. The Doves in 18, is that when I led the artist in the round like coffee shop?
Yep, I think it was before acoustic storytime was a thing. And
I think that's where the idea for acoustic storytime kind of,
yep.
you
So
know,
it was you and Andy Gullahorn and Tim Timmons and Michael Farron. And I
right.
did not even know you were going to be there because we had gotten the invite from Tim to come.
Yeah.
And when I saw you, so I was sitting in the front, and when I saw you walk into like with your guitar, I was like, "That's Jason Gray. Wait a
Yeah.
minute, that's Jason. He's here. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh!" So I was kind of like, I got really excited because it's like, "Oh my gosh, he's
Oh,
actually here, and I get to see him in person and hear these songs
oh.
and blah blah blah." So yeah, I hope I don't sound like too much of a fangirl, but
No, no, no. I mean, it's a little creepy, but my livelihood depends on a certain level of stalking from people, so thank you. I'm just
no, it's so funny to go from like that and just like I said, just being really excited because I didn't know you were going to be there.
yeah.
And so that was just like I said, that whole trip was a God thing because everybody that I met, everybody that got to talk with that trip was just it was the people who had actually meant like their music had really meant a lot to me in the like year or so prior. So it was so crazy. And I think you played Order, Disorder, Reorder like for one of the first times there. And I was like, ooh, yeah, that sounds about right
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
that, that time in my life too. So yeah, it's just really cool how all that works out.
So cool. Thank you for all that. That all means a lot. I remember um I there was a person in radio who I met. He was a radio programmer, and he came up to me at Momentum a few years ago, which is a gathering of everybody in the industry, for those who don't know what that is. And he said, "Hey, I want you to know, I never really liked your music. I didn't get you. Like when I released the album All the Lovely Losers, and it opens with losers, all the lovely losers who never and then, and it's and he said, and then I went through a divorce and I happened to hear your music again, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, I get it now, And so I do think that there is something about at least a lot of my music that it's it's like post-apocalyptic almost, like you have to go through some kind of personal apocalypse to um to derive the nuances of it, I think because I'm always um coming from that place and that viewpoint, and all of my language is, that it's in the DNA of all the songs and embedded in the language, Um, I think I've always written that way. Um, I've had a number of apocalypses in my life, but the one that preceded Where the Light Gets In was actually my own divorce. And the album before that was called Love Will Have the Final Word. And my marriage started to fall apart, like after my album A Way to See in the Dark and the Christmas record. When I listen to the Christmas record now, in it and um in that album, which which I think is one of my best records. And for those of you who may be hearing me for the first time, I do have a speech handicap, so some people find it adorable. But in the Christmas album, like I can kind of hear the pleading for my marriage to be restored. And then Love Will Have the Final Word was when things were really falling apart. And I'd had my first real breakthrough hit songs at radio. Remind Me Who I Am, Good to Be Alive, Nothing is Wasted. So there was momentum, things were finally beginning to work, and we needed to capitalize on that. So we need some more Christian radio hits. And I'm like, but my life is falling apart. How am I supposed to write those, And at that point, I didn't know where the story was going to go. Like I still had hope that we would find our way back to each other and that our marriage, could be healed. Um, and so I didn't want to write about what was happening because I didn't know how that story was going to go yet. Um, and so I remember most of the writing of that record was me trying to not write about my divorce. And then when I hear it back now, it's like, oh, that whole record's about my divorce, like I was trying so hard to not, but it's in there. It's all in there. And it was a little bit of a heavier record, heavier themes, and I was concerned about that. And one of the guys who helped me produce that, I remember him saying that, you know, oftentimes the first song on a record kind of colors my experience of the record as a whole. I thought, okay, that's what I need to do. I need to put the happiest song at the top of that record in hopes that it'll fool people into not realizing, oh, this is kind of a devastating record. There's a lot of pain in these songs. So it opens with Laugh Out Loud is the opening track. And then after that is With Every Act of Love, which is also kind of a up song. And then I think the song immediately after that's like a heartbreaker, and that's kind of the rest of the journey of that record. But and then it was in the release of that record that uh the divorce happened, and I was very devastated by that. I was very confused by it and went through a really dark year after that. And but in the meantime, With Every Act of Love went to number one. So that was my first. I remember I remember speaking with my mentor about this. This was a helpful understanding to gain through all that. I remember I finally had like a legitimate number one song with Every Act of Love. And I was talking with him, and I was just kind of like complaining or grieving over the fact that yeah, I can't even enjoy it though because all these other things are going wrong. And he said, you have to stop doing that. You have to you're you're clustering things, and you have to figure out how to decluster them so that, yes, even though this very painful thing is happening, this really good thing is happening too. And if you think about it, the album could be failing. So then this thing is a disaster and the record's a disaster too. So wow, it's a gift that this is going well. And it would be good for you to um find room in your heart to be able to celebrate that even while this other thing is going wrong. So that was a really helpful because I was clustering things. Like I remember a part of that same conversation is I'd be I'd be on the road doing a show and I missed my boys. Like it was painful to be away from my sons. And the pain was leading me to a sense of guilt that I shouldn't be away from them. And it's like you're clustering all of that. You're on the road because you're providing for your family. And so and you can feel and you can miss them, and that can be painful without it triggering guilt that you're doing something out of love for your family too. So that was I remember that season being a real um useful development of that discipline. And And now I can do that very well. Like I can be, things can be going horrible personally, but if there's a good thing happening, man, I can have a good time with that. I can celebrate that, and and that's just been a real helpful thing to learn how to do, because life is always both and, right? Like it's never going to be all great, especially as you get older, just like more and more complexities, yeah, come into the mix. But okay, so anyway, I'm all of that's happening. My divorce is finalized. I'm devastated for like a year, but I've had a number one, and we don't want to lose momentum. And so we got to make the next record. How do I make this record with a broken heart? I think where the light gets in, even the name of that, signals the first beginnings of hope. Hold on a second. I'm going to share a quote with you. I think I can find this. Yeah, here we go. Hold on. I think I have it at hand here. Um, uh, this is a quote from a book called "Cry the Beloved Country" by Alan Patton. Um, and uh, and it's a priest who's speaking with a character. He says, "My friend, your anxiety turned to fear, and your fear turned to sorrow. But sorrow is better than fear, for fear impoverishes always, while sorrow may enrich." And the other character says, "I do not know that I am enriched." And then the priest continues, Sorrow is better than fear. Fear is a journey, a terrible journey, but sorrow is at least an arriving. When the storm threatens, a man is afraid for his house, but when the house is destroyed, there's at least something to do. About a storm, he can't do anything, but he can rebuild a house. And I spent about 3 years in this torturous, constant anxiety of, is my marriage going to make it? Is it not going to make it? And then the worst thing happened, you know. But at least it was no longer that fear, and it was like, all right, it the storm came and blew my house down. That's heartbreaking. It's terrible. But the worst has happened, which means I can start to rebuild. I can do something. And I think where the light gets in represents that moment for me. It's a much more hopeful record. A lot of the themes on the record are about resurrection, life after death, life after catastrophe. I go deeper into that on the next record, order, disorder, reorder. But I will rise again, resurrection, the wound is where the light gets in, stolen, glow in the dark, learning to be found. What's that other one? Where we go from here. Like all of those are rebuilding after the storm songs. Learning even. So that's what that record represents to me. I think because of my anxiety about love will have the final word being a heavier record. I really wanted the new record to uh, open up the windows, have a little light in it. Um, and I think it feels that way. I think it's a very hopeful album in the melodies, in the production, um, learning I was always so proud of that song. I really wanted that one to be a single. I thought that'd be a single. I thought it was such and it was a very up up song, and it was inspired by uh I think it's often attributed to uh N- Nelson Mandela. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but that's usually who I see it attributed to. Uh he said he said, I never lose. I either win or I learn. I thought, what a great quote. And in that way, it's actually better to learn. You know what beats winning? Learning. Being wrong enough so you can learn something new, you know? Being like, if you win, you don't get anything out of that, but if you lose, if you're wrong, if you go through a catastrophe, oh my gosh, there's many treasures are offered to you. You said a moment ago, you know, um, I liked the album, and then I went through some things, and I came back to it, and I discovered there was more there. There's always more there that we can't access until we go through some kind of hell, you know, some kind of catastrophe. Um, and you begin to uh, you experience that enough, and you begin to trust it, and then it's the hard things don't they just aren't as hard, because like as hard as it is, and I'm not being Pollyanna here. I'm not like being overly positive here, and I don't mean to be reckless with other people's pain, because I know there's deep pain that I don't know anything about, but my own experience with my own pain is that it has led me to some of the deepest riches of wisdom and character and uh, depth of feeling. Um, I think you can only go as high as you go low, and so the pain I have experienced also has increased my joy, and so yeah. Anyway, I don't know where I was going with all that, except for I was gonna say I was gonna say two things. The album opens up with learning, and and there's another song on the album called "Learning to Be Found." And I kind of always wanted that song to be the opener, because the opening line is, if you knew my story, well, you might not want to listen to my songs. I thought that's a great opening line for a record, I wouldn't blame you, but I'll be here waiting when you need to sing along. And that signals that was a reflection on the radio guy who I spoke with, who said, I didn't really like your songs until I went through this hard thing. And then I was like, oh, yeah, and I'll be here waiting when you need to sing along. So I always thought that would be such a killer opening line for a record. But musically, like it wasn't, I think Learning was the right opening song. Like it's kind of makes a big splash sonically. I'll say this about it too. Um, so I was on the road with Big Daddy Weave when we started recording that record. Where the Light Gets In also is the first time that I didn't make a record with a single producer. Actually, I will have final word I did with two producers, but where the light gets in, uh, it's almost like a different producer for each of the songs. And that's the first time I ever did that, and I was concerned about like, is this album going to sound piecemeal and inconsistent because it's all these different musical sensibilities, you know, as opposed to a cohesive. But I think the experiment worked. Uh, how I experienced it is that, oh, with having multiple producers, each like taking a song, each song got carried over in its own way because everyone's like, I want mine to be one of the cool ones on the record. You know what I mean? So I do think there is something about how it may not be as cohesive, but I think each song feels like it's got some uh, focused attention on it, you know. But so I was on the road with Big Daddy Weave, and a guy named Colby Wedgeworth was producing the song Learning. And we had uh, written it with each other. And he said, "Hey, would you just play through the song on your acoustic guitar on your iPhone all the way through, so I kind of know what the structure is, and then I can build the track, you know, like, oh yeah, here's verse one, and then a pre-chorus, and then, oh, here's how long you play before you start to sing verse two. Yeah, yeah, I can do that, you know." So um I finished my opening set um with Big Daddy Weave. And then I went out the building, and I went out in the parking lot by the woods, and I sat down on the curb, and I balanced my iPhone on my knee, and I just quick played through it. And then I sent it to him. And like a couple weeks later, I get the track back, and the guitar thing sounds kind of cool. The acoustic guitar sounds cool, and it sounds kind of like how I would play it. And I'm like, who did you get to play the guitar? Because like I was expecting you were gonna have me in to do that when I was back in town. He goes, "Oh, it's actually you. I took what you played on your iPhone, you know, so not like an expensive mic or anything like that. Me balancing it on my knee. I'm not playing with a drum or a click track, but he was able to grab that and line it up, you know, manipulate it so that it was with the metronome of the song. And I think it sounds really cool. Like I think the acoustic guitar sounds really cool on that song. And then I noticed you can hear crickets because I was by the woods, you know. So opening part of the song goes "Jun, jun, cricket, dun, 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 cricket, dun, 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 dun." So it sounds like it's guitar noise almost, but once you hear it, you'll be like, "Oh my gosh, I'll never unhear that. That's a cricket," you know? So okay. Anyway, I'm sure you have some other things to ask me. That was a long a long story. So thank you.
That's okay. I love it. I love hearing those kind of stories. And now I'm going to have to go back. I just listened to that song the other day, but now I'm going to have to go pay more attention to learning and see if I can
Yeah.
pick up on the cricket sound.
Yeah. There's that let me look it up quick. There's um that quote by Teddy Roosevelt. Um what is it? The man in the arena. Have you ever heard that quote? Uh,
Possibly.
he said, "The man in the arena." Let me see if I can find this really quick. Yeah, here it is. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Oh man, what a great quote. Holy smokes, that's so good. Um, and so verse 2 of learning is remember how it goes? Shoot. Shoot, I better just look it up quick. Hold on. I can do this really, really fast. I can do it on my phone here. This, and you've seen me in concert, so you know that often I have to look up my own lyrics, right?
And I'm
You-
trying to go through all the files in my head to come up with the second
Yeah.
verse. And of course, at the moment, it's not there.
Lyrics to Learning, Jason Gray. Here we go. It's thinking, it's searching. Here we go. It goes, yeah. Let them shout from the bleachers every time I don't get it right. Ooh, yeah. I know my failure's my teacher, and I'm still here in the fight. That was me trying to paraphrase Teddy Roosevelt. So, yeah.
Nice. I love that. That was great. I love hearing. I mean, I am a story person. I love hearing the creative stories behind everything. So I just sit here and listen, and I could listen to it all day long. I love it so much.
That was a
But yeah,
long story.
you're saying how these songs they kind of grow with people, and when you go through things, and we're both talking a little bit about that. And I know for me, like I said, Sparrows was kind of the one that made me take another look and look deeper into your songs. And after I heard the full of Where the Light Gets In, I went back and listened to your other albums
Hmm.
and found a lot of good stuff on there. So, and it seems like it's an ongoing theme where there's always something to find. And like we've been saying with life, it's going to have a little bit different meaning to you. So, I know one of the things that happened for me was when my grandma had passed away. So that was like one of the things that I had mentioned when I was sharing about how that time in between, like, when my faith was becoming my own and I was really getting to the point where I was like, okay, I'm really in this 100% and this is awesome. And then that happened. And then there was like a 5-year period where I just kind of like, I don't know so much anymore. I mean, like I said, didn't completely turn away, but wasn't as much of a priority. And
Yeah.
so it was a few years later when I heard Sparrows. And like I said, that kind of was the start of a reawakening a little bit. And another one that a couple years later, and one of the other things that was going on was like friendships were getting distant and changing like they always do, because as you grow as a human and you start going in different directions, and eventually they might just fall apart. And so that kind of was where Death Without a Funeral took on a little bit of a different tone for me, because at the time when I listened to it the first time around, I was thinking, my mind was just like, oh yeah, it's kind of a sad song, and I don't know what really to make of this, but it's like I could feel, something was there. And it does end on it does end on kind of a hopeful note there, though. But yeah, it's just like that was
J-
another time where,
Yeah, like
yeah.
that. Like
So
a rumor of hopefulness, right? Yeah.
yeah, so that was kind of where that song just kind of taken on a little bit more deeper meaning for me as well. Um, like I said, and that couple years later where I was coming back and just getting through that time.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love hearing all of the like behind the stuff that went into all the creating of Where the Light Gets In. And I feel like since you mentioned how this was the first album after you'd gone through that divorce and just a really dark time in your own life, and I think that not only musically but personally and in your faith journey, it was like the start of a new chapter for you in a lot of ways.
Yeah. You know, also, I mean, there is an expiration date on radio play for artists. I wish it wasn't so, but they aren't playing new Rolling Stones songs on the radio, right? Even though they dominated. They aren't playing, like even in our genre, uh, Stephen Curtis Chapman had 56 number ones. Is that right?
I think so.
Just dominance, a beloved artist in our genre, and it's hard for him to get radio airplay these days because his songs aren't as good. No, no, his songs are as good as ever in some ways, better because he's older, he's had some experiences, but just people uh the programmers, they and a part of that I understand they have to make room in the playlist for newer artists, but I wish it didn't I wish it didn't work that way. I wish it was more merit based. It seems too that it's as artists get older that airplay slips, and I think that's unfortunate because Carl Jung, he said life really does begin after 40. Up until then, you're just doing research, and I feel like I've got more truthful, more meaningful things to say now than I ever have. And I think the songs off of Where the Light Hits In were more meaningful than the songs that came before it. But that's also the album where it started to get harder to get radio airplay. Um, Sparrows did pretty well. Some of that also may be, I th I think people didn't know what to think of the divorce, like, do we play, um, which is a bummer. Um, but after Sparrows, the next song was I Will Rise Again was the next radio single. And it's my first one that, you know, my team went into it feeling like this is the best single Jason has ever given us. They were so excited about the song. They had a lot of high hopes for it. I was very proud of the song. Um, and it just didn't get played. Um, and that was the first like, oh shoot, Um, so that was always a bummer. But but the song, in spite of that, is one of my more popular songs. Like when I play it live, and it feels like a signature song of mine, even though it didn't get the notoriety that it might have otherwise, So yeah. I think you were asking me earlier about like, is there a song on the album? Like there are a lot of songs on the album that receive attention, and I think you were asking me, is there any one that, you'd want to speak about that, uh, would surprise people? And it would be Death Without a Funeral. I think that might be one of the top three songs I've ever written. I wrote it with my friend Andy Gullahorn, and it's my most like explicit divorce song, but I wanted to write it in a way that whatever loss you've experienced, So the beautiful thing about a funeral is everybody knows what to do. They know, oh, shoot, they lost somebody. Let's arrange a meal train, make sure that he has meals, and let's gather around him, grieve with him, Um, and also another beautiful thing about a funeral is that is it marks the end of something. It's the period at the end of a sentence. That's painful, but at least it's like the clear ending. You have laid it in the ground, which frees you to grieve and to move on. Like it's a clear, it's closure, right? But as you know, there are many deaths that we experience where there is no funeral. The death of a friendship, the death of a dream, a career, even, right? A hope. And people around us, it's not as clear them what they should do for us, what they can do for us. And it's also harder for us to to have that sense of closure that helps us to move on. So the wound can remain open. And so I wrote the song hoping that it could serve as a kind of funeral for people who go through those kinds of deaths, and that the song might um, feel like yeah, that was heartbreaking, and all right, I'll move on. So yeah, that was a song that I hoped would catch on more than it did. Um, it has a little bit, but oh, look, I got a guitar here. There's no stone to lay the flowers down beside. No mention in the paper of something clearly died. No gathering for family and friends to eulogize. It's a death without a funeral. There's no book to sign for people filing in. No table for the pictures where they'd say, remember when. No song is sung about how all good things come to an end. It's a death without a funeral. If you see me, I'm still breathing, though a million things have died inside of me. There's no healing without grief. No wonder why it's hard to rest in peace when there's nothing we can bury in the dirt. No way, no place to lay the memories of all the things that were. No way to feel the closure, no ending for the hurt. It's a death without a funeral. I'll just keep playing because I'm almost done. And so if you see me, I'm still breathing. There's a million things have died inside of me. There's no healing without grieving. No wonder why it's hard to rest in peace. One apple hadn't fallen, the leaves. As I reached up, I remembered how we both planted that tree. With one bite, I was surprised to find the fruit was still so sweet. that last part of the song, I um I wrote it with my friend Andy Gullahorn, and I told him about an experience I had after the divorce, and I was at home, and it was no longer my family's home. I was there by myself, and so depressed, so heartbroken, so confused, like how did this happen, and I got to get out of here. And so I was about to go on a tour, and and it was based out of Nashville. My house was up in Minnesota at the time, and so I thought I'm just gonna leave town early, and I'm just gonna stay in Nashville. And so I packed up the car, and this is late October, and I'm in the car backing out of my driveway. And a few years earlier, my wife and I planted two apple trees because they were, you needed these two trees because they would cross-pollinate. And that's how they would create our favorite apple, the Honeycrisp apple. So we had planted these two trees, back there, and they had started to produce apples, and we were so happy about that. It was maybe 5 years before the divorce. Anyway, the year of the divorce, there was a bad storm that blew through and snapped one of the trees in half. And that felt like a portent, like one tree left standing there. And that felt like it was me. And I remember up, uh okay, yeah, I'll share the whole thing. Um one of my sons had 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 been home with me for a while, and as he was leaving, he saw a bunch of apples, and he went and he picked them. I think his mom had asked him or something like that. Anyway, somehow I knew they were going to his mom. And I don't want to be petty or bitter, but I was just in a lot of pain. And there was something that felt unjust about that. Like, if you want those apples, be here. Let's work it out or whatever. Was where my mind went. Um, I don't mean to demonize her in that. The human heart's very complicated. And yeah, so um, I think we were both doing the best we knew how at the time with the pain that we were experiencing. So, but in that moment, I had that kind of angst. And he took those apples. Anyway, um, so a week or two later, I'm leaving. I'm in the car, headed to Nashville because I can't be in my house anymore. And I'm backing out of the driveway. And I see one apple in the tree. And I just have this feeling in me like, I'm supposed to go pick that apple. I think I'm supposed to eat it. And I didn't want to. I had I had anger, which was just anger is an easier emotion than hurt, right? I was overwhelmed by hurt, and so it was easier to feel it as anger. But I had this feeling I was supposed to do it, so I went back in the driveway and I kind of climbed up there and I grabbed this damn apple. I get in the car and I throw it in the seat. And I'm driving. It's like a 12-hour drive, and this apple is just kind of rolling around on the seat. I'm just aware of it, like it's heavy. It's heavy on my mind. And I'm just a wreck, Kelly. I was a wreck for a long time. I still am in a lot of ways. Um, and about 3 hours into the drive, I feel like, all right, I think it's time. And I grab the apple I'm just kind of angry about the whole thing. And I take the bite, and then I just start. Um, it tasted good. Of course it did. It's an apple, right? But that was the last thing I expected. And it just like it opened up this I think the goodness of it just like created enough of a tender moment where I could feel and just all the feelings came. I just started weeping, you know. Something about it felt hopeful. I, I'm 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 giving meaning to it now, but in the moment I didn't know what it meant. I felt so much, you know. I remember being surprised by the goodness of it, and then I was a mess. And I told Andy about it. He goes, "Oh, I think that needs to be the end of the song, you know." And so that's what that last verse is. I love that it's not over explained. It's not declaring any kind of hope. It's just this little image that the Holy Spirit can make it mean whatever it needs to mean for you. I hope that's how it works. And around that time, you know, when I wrote the song, um, I was just beginning to fall in love again. I didn't know that could happen, you know. So my heart was like opening up again, and I was very much in love with this person. I'm like, oh wow, uh, is that what the sweetness meant? That love can still be sweet after um, a long period of bitterness, you know, and or of not goodness, you know. Uh, there's an Arcade Fire song off of the Neon Bible record, and he declares, "Nothing tastes good," and I had just been in a long season of that, you know, and so the sweetness of it just reminded, like, oh, things could be good, you know. So was the sweetness of it that, oh, love can be good still, you know? Was the sweetness of it a reminder of, for all that we went through and for all that was lost, we produced three incredible human beings, my sons, that I'm just so grateful for, you know? Um, Frankly, I'm not sure what it means. Like, it maybe means all those things and other things I haven't experienced yet, you know? So, um, yeah, you know, okay, I'm talking too long. I know we have to go here. If people are still tuned in, thank you for listening this long. But it brings me to an idea that I think about a lot, and this might be a good example of it. And it's uh, author Jordan Peterson suggests that if you are creating something, and when you set out to create something, if you know what it's going to say as you begin, there at the beginning, it may not be art. It may be propaganda. It may be like, I know this thing I want to say, this idea I want to defend, and here's my song about it. Um, Whereas, you know, and that doesn't have to be bad. Like propaganda doesn't have to be a dirty word, right? You know, but the pure creative experience is like a little more daring than that. Maybe it's I'm gonna sit down and I don't know what's gonna come out. And I'm not gonna try to manage it, make it say what I want it to say. I'm just gonna see what comes and allow it to surprise me. And I'm not gonna demand that I understand it even, you know. A few times in my life I've been brave enough to write like that. That's harder to write like that, you know. But I think that last verse of the song is an example of that. I wrote it, I'm like, I'm not even sure exactly what that means, but I know it's true. It feels true. So that's what it is. And so I really am grateful for that, for the quality of that verse. It's interesting because the first part of the song is very clear crafted, you know, like you're following the ideas, and the images are very clear. You know exactly how you should think about them, right? And that last verse is a little more open-ended, you know. It departs from that um, from that clearer language, you know, where the metaphors are a little more obvious, you know. So anyway, I'm proud of that song. I hope it's helpful to people. I'm glad to hear that it helped you in some way. Thank you for allowing me to go on and on about these things. So sorry that I talked.
No, you do not have to apologize at all. Yeah, it's funny because like you're sharing in that song and that line in particular. One of the things that came to mind when I was thinking of like you and maybe where your mindset was your boys when I was hearing that. I was like, oh, because when I knew like things that you had gone through at that point, and I was like, well, maybe it's supposed to mean like even though all this stuff that was so hurtful and painful, but we still got these awesome humans out of it. And then another thing, like I guess for me it's probably like there's still like no matter what you go through, God's going to be able to use it in some way, and he is still going to. We don't know when, we don't know how, and we may not be able to see it right away, and it might not even be obvious until years later, but we can be like, oh yeah, that's why. Here's what was still good that came out of that time. Or but yeah, just how something can still be, there is still good and there is still that sweetness of life no matter how dark it gets for us.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said earlier too, when you come out the other side of whatever hell you've been walking through, I don't know. It's like after it's like after a rain. The grass is greener, you know, the sky is an ocean, like everything is just more, you know. So hardship has it can go the other way too, right? We can become bitter, and I've gone that way in different times in my life, and um, I've tried to not give myself over to that. I think that's the main adventure I'm on these days, is how do I not give room for resentment to take hold in my heart, you know? Um, yeah, so, but yeah, so I hope that song is helpful. And the further away I am from the song, I do feel like it's my boys. Like that's the clear metaphor of like part of what that sweetness meant. And there's a song that helped me personally a lot in that time, a song by David Wilcox called Deeper Still. And the punchline of the chorus is you will always have what you gave to love. You will always have what you gave to love. And the idea behind it is, well, yeah. It opens with in the tears you gave to me, I found a river to an ocean. Concrete a conc yeah, a concrete sky and a stone cold sea brought me to where the shoot. I didn't know I was going to do this, otherwise I would have brushed up on it. Oh yeah, brought me to where the emptiness cracked open. So what was so meaningful to me in that song, and I think it's echoed in that last verse of Death Without a Funeral, is that it's, yeah, love, love hurts. If you love, you set yourself up for pain. But what else are we gonna do? You know? Because if you don't love, you become hollow and small and bitter. So even when you love, even if you love and it goes horribly wrong, at least you loved and that made something of you, right? And so you will always have what you gave to love. Isn't that such a beautiful? I wish I'd written that song. Gosh, that's a top three song for me. Deeper Still by David Wilcox for anyone who wants to hear it. You will always have what you gave to love. Yeah. So um the fruit was still so sweet, right? So but okay. Anyway.
Yeah, and that also kind of reminds me, like we recently had a death in our family, and when we were at the service last week, one of my cousins had mentioned how, like, I don't even, I'm not sure who the quote is. You might know. Um,
Okay.
but it was about how, like, how lucky am I that, had so much love that it makes goodbye so hard, something like that, or it makes it so hard to say goodbye. So that's like kind of a perfect summary
Yeah.
of that as well. Like, yeah, you loved this much that the goodbye is hard,
Yeah.
but you can still be grateful for that love and the time and just everything that you had.
Um, Beautiful quote, right?
Hmm.
Love is, or excuse me, grief is the evidence of the love, right? So if you don't want to grieve, if you don't want pain, all right, easy. Don't love. Don't give your heart to anything. Don't open your heart to anything. So, speaking of Arcade Fire, their newest album is called "Open Your Heart or Die Trying."
Mm.
That's a good.
That's good.
So,
Yeah,
and
I mean, and you also mentioned I Will Rise Again, which I kind of feel like that's almost a good follow-up to what we were just talking about too, because it's like, you go through all of this, but you can still come out the other side and rise again. And that is one of my favorite ones to hear you do live. I always love hearing the live version because you get that cool part at the beginning where you mix in the Prince song and you do that fun thing with your guitar, which if people have seen you, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And if not, they can look it up on YouTube because it's somewhere.
come see me.
Yes, definitely. You need to go see him. And after this, you want to. Come on. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, anyway, with I Will Rise Again, in the second verse where you have like love came down and redefined me piece by piece, put me back together differently. I love that line. It's so,
Thank.
so good. So yeah, that's another song that has always really stood out from the Where the Light Gets In album.
All right. I'm sure we have to go, but I'm going to share one last anecdote that I don't know might be ill-advised but I'm going to do it anyway because it's my record. It's the 10th anniversary. Um, I'm always looking for an image that kind of helps. Like if I have this image in my mind, it kind of like an image kind of encapsulates a spirit or a posture, and that can kind of become a guiding light. Um, for my last record, Land of the Living, I saw a picture of Ray Charles standing before the audience, and they're applauding him, and his arms are open wide. And it's not like he's just like, yeah, aren't I awesome? Thanks for applauding me. It's more like, yeah, isn't this great? We're in this together. And it's this posture of generosity and him loving the audience. And that kind of became the guiding image in my mind for that record. I want to make a record that meets the audience where they're at and gives them some crowd pleasers and like, yeah, I love you guys. I think these are some things that matter to you, and I'm gonna write songs about them, you know. So that was a guiding image for that record. Okay, where the light gets in for some of the songs, a guiding image. This may surprise people, and if if you don't like this, I completely understand. But I I opened up Billboard magazine, and it was around the time that Johnny Cash had released one of his American recordings albums, and country radio didn't play any of the songs, even though he's Johnny Cash, a living legend, right? And so in Billboard magazine, they took out a two-page spread, and it said, Johnny Cash would like to thank country radio for playing songs from his new album. And it was this large image from when he was younger of him leaned into the camera with a middle finger up, you know? And there was something about when I saw that image, it was so uh, joyfully like subversive. And, you know, with all that I had been through, that, you know, the pain that tried to swallow me alive, that particular grave, and how I had experienced resurrection that broke me out of that grave. I thought that's the spirit of resurrection in a sense. I don't mean to offend anybody, but like, you know, there is something about Jesus that is very defiant to the power structures, the religious structures of his age, and even to death. Resurrection is such is in such defiance to death and every kind of death. I thought, you know, it's like the middle finger to death, you know, and so I wanted to have that image in my mind as I was writing these songs about resurrection. Um, and so uh, uh, let's see. Put me back together differently until the perfect plan to try to take me down has been put to shame and been turned around until I come so alive that death is afraid of me. That was that moment on that album where I was wanting to capture that spirit that I'd seen in that Johnny Cash picture, you know. Uh, oh, yeah, pain and death. I'm going to let what you tried to do to me, I'm going to put it in the Lord's hands and let Him use it to make me come so alive that death is afraid of me, you know. So hope I hope that blesses people.
Knew exactly where you were going with that before you got to it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, in closing, this has been amazing, and I always love talking with you. So just getting to have this time, it's just fantastic.
Me
Um, but kind
too.
of in closing here, when you think about just the past decade and the stories that you've heard from people over the years about these songs, and just seeing where God is still continuing to take them even now, how does it make you feel to kind of know the legacy and the impact that is still building as a result of this record?
Gosh, it's so, I'm just overwhelmed with gratitude. You know, you're in a room by yourself or with a friend trying to rhyme words, trying to cut through your own falseness and rise above all your weaknesses to say something that you hope is true and meaningful, and to have that met with with such kindness and generosity. And, you gave those songs a good home in your life, in your heart. Thank you for that. Gosh, what a gift. There are creators who 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 are reluctant to consider the audience in their artwork because they don't want to be like people pleasing. They want to, I don't want to do this so people will like me or approve of me. I want to have this pure creative moment, and whatever people think of it, it doesn't matter. I get that there's a lot of beautiful, meaningful art that comes from that, but I do think about the listener as I'm writing the songs. I think about them. And for me, in a very real way, I do feel like the listener completes the song for me, so that the song, until it goes out and it lands on the listener and it does something in them, that's when, there, it's fulfilled its purpose or something like that. So thank you for dignifying my work. Thank you for completing my work.
Yeah, something else really cool that you've been working on that I know you've been working really hard on the past few years is the devotional book. And it's a devotional for every single song that you've ever released, for those who haven't heard anything about it. And so we know the songs from Where the Light Gets In are going to be a part of it. And I am so excited. Can't wait to read that when it's out. And I know that I'm pretty sure we'll have you back on again pretty soon to talk about that as well. So until then, I want to encourage everyone to visit jasongraymusic.com and follow him on social media to keep up with everything that he has going on. I'll link those pages in the description below this video. And also be sure to look up Where the Light Gets In everywhere music is available, along with the rest of Jason's albums, because I think you're going to want to go through like the whole catalog at this point, now that you've gotten to hear about this album. So yeah, just take some time and spend some time with this record as well as the rest of his music, and I think you'll be very blessed by that. So yeah, Jason, this was awesome. Thank you again so much for taking the time.
Thank you, Kelly. Always meaningful to get to talk. Thank you for being a person who creates space for meaningful conversation. Thank you for that.